Hello, everybody, and welcome to Athletic Definition. My name is Coach Ray, and today I have a special guest, um, Ol. I practiced your last name so many times, and I don't want to butcher it, so I will just call you by your first name. I know this is your first time on Fireside, so you have to unmute, and then after that, I will be able to hear you.
Hey, Ray, what's happening, man? I appreciate you not butchering my last name. It's pronounced Olamigokey. And yeah, this is my first time on Fireside. So it's good to be here.
Well, welcome. We met through basically because we're into fitness, and then we we're talking about ATG, but before we get there, I started checking out stalking your Instagram, and I saw a lot of your stories, and I was like, man, this guy's really inspirational, and so I wanted to have you as a guest. And one of the things that I saw on there was that you mentioned that just as a little kid, you always knew you wanted to represent your home country. And I think that's great because a lot of kids have no idea, or people as they get older, what they want to do. So, what inspired you? Do you have family that runs a track and field, or how did you get started?
Um, yeah, it's funny. I'm actually the only person in my family who took professional track and field or athletics. I'm the only person in my family who took athletics beyond high school, actually. But yeah, as you said, I'm the only person in my family, also immediate family, who was not born in Nigeria. So after my parents came over, they immigrated from Nigeria with my three other siblings, two sisters and one brother, in 1986. I was born in 1990, and growing up, you know, I didn't necessarily have the opportunity to go back to Nigeria. So I always thought going to Nigeria if something would be great. It ended up not happening until I turned 22. And I went there of all things to go try out not to try out, but to compete at the national championship. And I ended up winning on my first time in the country. So the rest is history, and the path for that was definitely predestined.
Wow. Well, that is very cool, and especially since you don't have any like prior family to be in track and field, so that makes it even more special. And then
Yeah.
I learned that you went to Rio and you competed, and I think that a lot of people's dream is just to go compete in the Olympics, in any sort of competition. It's just a dream to be able to represent your country. So how was that when you finally achieved your dream?
Ma'am, that's something that what is this? 5 years later, and it's still hard to put into concise words. But I will say it's literally a dream come true, and I guess the best way I can describe it is this: to have a dream come true of that magnitude, which is really like a focal point of your childhood. Now, not I'm not going to sit here and say I was 10 years old, always wanted to run in the Olympics, but from when I was about 15 and I realized I was getting pretty good at the triple jump, that's when I had decided to take it to the top. So, I mean, I'm 30 now, so 15 years ago, I had the seed planted in my mind that it was a possibility. So, for that to happen, at the time I was 25, I think I kind of equivalated to a lot of philanthropists who may become billionaires, and they realized that their business ambitions were reached when they made $1 million or $1 billion, whatever. And now all they want to do is give back the gift, and that's where I am. I made it to the pinnacle of what I saw myself as my athletic potential. Now I'm still an athlete. I'm still competing. I'm still actively competing and intend to jump further than I ever have. But the focal point isn't on me anymore. It's about the bigger picture, about giving that gift back, the inspiration, the words, the little things, the big things, constantly paying it forward.
And is that what led you into coaching?
Yes, yes. Actually, what's funny about that? I was kind of like one of those athlete coaches growing up. I'm very much a student of my sport, so I dive in like it's schoolwork almost in a way. And at a very early age, again, I started triple jumping technically when I was 12, but didn't take it serious. Didn't do it again until I was 15. And at that point in time, I had started to really do some research on YouTube, which had just come out at the time, and um, from there, I started to gain a really deep understanding of both the track and field as a whole, and the triple jump, and the human body all at once. So I would end up being like, as a captain on my team, I'd also be coaching some of the other. other high school athletes I was training with. So in a way, I've been coaching as long as I've been an athlete. Although I didn't make it formal until I guess it was 2013 when I began volunteering at Georgetown University, and I was coaching there, volunteer for 2 seasons, and then full time for 2 seasons.
Oh, everybody that does sports, there's a lot of volunteer work to do, and that's takes a passionate person to do that. I know so many people that donate their time to help the younger generation, and I myself coach a couple people for free because I see potential in them, and
Yeah.
I want to be that person that believes in them, and hopefully from that point on they can have enough confidence to take it bigger and better.
Right, right, and that's what it is. I mean, again, it goes back to the coaching and the mentor side as well. It's just you get to this point where the payment come. I mean, of course, I like to be compensated for my services, and I'm good at what I do. Let's not get it twisted. But at the same time, it's the reward, the bigger reward, beyond the dollar sign, is just seeing that spark that I saw, that someone saw within me in somebody else. And it's not all about me. It's in fact very little about me. I'm just a vessel for that. I'm like a conduit for that spark to go from wherever it came from, wherever the inspiration came from God, the universe, and then put into somebody else. So yeah, the payment is the joy of just doing it.
And I watch a lot of different sports, and I see athletes like I could think of one off the top of my head, Terry Bradshaw, and a lot of them, once they hit that pinnacle of their sport, like for him it was a Super Bowl, they get depressed, and for some of them, you know, they don't want to keep competing as hard. So, for you, what was different? What or did you get depressed, or what drove you to keep wanting to compete and break new records?
That's a deep question, and I I'm gonna do my best to answer it like without getting too deep. But I mean, at the same time, I kind of keep my heart on my sleeve in a way. So my life, I never really played a lot of youth sports. I consider myself backyard sports all American. I joke around about that because I was always running outside, literally jumping onto trees and off of trees. I know it sounds crazy, but you can kind of see how that led to me triple jumping. But I was always doing athletic stuff since I was a kid, even if it wasn't formal. So I don't know. I guess in a way, hmm, it's hard to. I know. I have to. I like to think about what I say sometimes before I say it. But basically, I just think things in my life kind of played out as they should have in many different ways. And yeah, I mean, that's all I can go with that. You know what I mean?
No, that's great. I actually like the way that you are articulate, and when I see your videos, I can tell that you are very well spoken. So I don't mind at all if you just want to, keep it as accurate as possible. So thank you
Yeah,
for that.
of course, of course. I mean, that's yeah. I'm the type of guy where I don't really speak unless I mean it. And again, I think that the way I am now is very much similar to how I was as a child, but in a way, the evolution of me as a man is now that I just realized that everything I do is not just about me. Again, I really think that's one thing that's what I took away from my Olympic Games experience because I worked so hard to get there, and then you finally get there, and then from the mountaintop, it's the most blissful feeling in the world, and you're like, okay, well, I'm still here, so what more is there? What else is out there? And I kind of gotten what I really wanted, so now from here, it's just finding more creative ways to bring that to the world.
And as I was watching some of more of your video, I saw that you were training, getting ready once again for Tokyo, and then you got injured.
Mm-hmm.
And now the injury came in the rain. Is that common to be training in the rain, or and that's just because I'm not really familiar with triple jumping. Is there an option for indoor, or how did that come about?
That's actually a great question because, yeah, training outside, that's a thing. I mean, because we compete. Indoor track is, one thing where, in the first part of the year, we compete indoors around the world. But indoor track is often looked at as just like the warm up to outdoor track because outdoor track is considered real track and field, so to speak, because when you're in the elements and all of that just leads to better performances than indoors generally. So as far as the injury goes, it was in the rain, but that's not anything that I haven't done before. I think that injury in and of itself was, I labeled it as a freak accident before, but I just, again, this is how things work in my life. I had been doubting the training situation I was in at the time, and it was at the very beginning of 2020, going into what we thought was going to be the Olympic year before COVID. So I was thinking, I remember standing up after tying my shoe and looking around and be like, why am I here? Not because I didn't like track anymore, but not because of any like negative, overwhelming negative feeling, but more like, is this the place for me? 15 minutes later, I got hurt in the rain, and I don't get hurt in the drill that we're doing. We've done 100. I've done it hundreds of times in my career, but basically, long story short, it was something that needed to happen, and has led to me training back with my original coach and a whole bunch of other life changes. You know,
You mentioned COVID, and I know COVID affected so many different Olympic athletes in different ways. For some of them, uh, it was better because they were injured, so it gave them that extra year to train. And
right?
for some of them, it just retired them because they were already, coming to the end of their career, and they wouldn't be able to, do it again. So, for you, with the injury, do you feel that COVID came at, I don't want to say the right time because it wasn't the right time for anybody, but was it beneficial for recovery to get back to the Olympics? Or
Yeah, it absolutely was. And I should also say full disclosure. I'm not. I started competing again this year, but I have not qualified for the Olympics yet because I'm actually planning on just for going this year's Olympics and getting ready for the next Olympic cycle. But as far as the COVID thing, that really has been great. And I don't want to. I say this with sensitivity to the fact that this is a very real situation in the world. Um, so there's a, even though I got hurt, and I sometimes say like when I got hurt was right before the pandemic, and I was already in the house. I also realized once again that the bigger picture, without getting lost into these details, the bigger picture did lead to, yes, it creating more space for me to recover going into 2021, the 2021 Olympics. But the thing about that is I also realized in the beginning of 2021 that while I could just go back to things as usual after I fully recovered and keep training for Tokyo, I could also, knowing I've already checked that goal off, I could do it better. I could take my time and recover and fully surpass everything I've done prior in my career. So that's the mindset I've had. And again, I don't think I would have had that mindset had I not already made it to the Olympic Games once and known what it takes to be at your best when you're there. I made it before. I just made it, and that was cool. And I competed, and I was a semifinalist, and all this stuff. But the next time I go, I intend to win. So I don't want to just go just to go if I'm not really being able to put my best foot forward. And that of course comes with listening to your body. That's just being an athlete. And I've gotten to this point in my life, not to cut you off, but I've gotten to this point in my career as an athlete to know that you know my body is my number one tool. If my body's not where I need it to be, it would be a waste. It would be unwise for me to do anything, to exert too much.
I no, I completely agree. I think that the more you can get in touch with your body and just be connected and know kind of when to push and when you're really hurt and everything else, it helps for the process because there'll be times where it's just, you know, you, the mentality is you just want to be lazy, but then there's the times where you just really need a rest. So
Yeah,
it's good to know the difference.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And it took me. I joke around about it, but if we're talking about, I got injured at 29 in the beginning of 2020. Had I not gone through life as I'd gone through for 15 years, I wouldn't even know what to do with that situation. If this injury happened 2 years ago rather than 1 year ago, I probably would have run myself into the ground. Um, and to go back to your question about depression, I did run into depression earlier in my career, but not necessarily as a cause of athletics, but more of a whole life thing. Which, as you made, or you've done your research on me, you've done pretty good research on me, so I'm all about living and competing holistically. But that wasn't always my approach, and that came direct as a derivative of going through some major anxieties and then major battles that I think were directly caused by not addressing, parts of my past that were unhealed, so to speak. And not to get too off the beaten path with the conversation, but I think just yes, the answer is yes. I did go through some mental health challenges, and I think giving back again. I'm a broken record with this, but giving back and like destigmatizing that among athletes is like a very much a major mission of mine.
And you don't have to like worry about stirring off the topic. There is no like set flow. So feel free if you want to, if that's what you believe in and that's what you want to speak on. I'm happy to hear. This is
Yeah.
my platform to bring on people that I find inspirational, and so I wanted to deep dive into all that, and I have done my research, and I was wondering, have you had a donut? Are you?
That's a great question because I actually have not. I haven't had a donut in 4 years, and it's no donuts in Tokyo, as you put in the title, man. That's the mission.
I saw the video and it was great, and at first I was like, I didn't think I was going to learn a lesson because it was kind of funny in the beginning. You're all like sick from eating too many donuts,
Yeah.
and then as I was watching, I'm like, oh, that was pretty deep. So
Mhm.
if people haven't seen it, you should check out his Instagram and look at some of his stories. I'm gonna see if I could put on the fortune cookie your Instagram handle, and that way
That'd be great.
you can
You
follow
know,
you.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'll actually repost that because um, I think a lot of people. It's funny because I think I forgot that I did that project, but when I made that, it was again just exactly where my mind is, and the mission behind the no don't. It's all deeper than donuts, is what it boils down to. You know, for those who have maybe not know what we're talking about when we say no donuts to Tokyo. Um, on the way to the Rio Olympic Games in 2012, I used to. I was a 22-year-old college kid. I would crush like a dozen donuts in a day, literally. And I did that one time and felt sick and decided at that. And there was a question that popped in my mind as I was feeling sick. And I was like, the question was, is this how an Olympian would eat? And I immediately answered that question, no. So I said, I'm not going to have another donut until I get back from the Rio Olympics. And of course, it's silly on the surface because we're just talking about donuts and Krispy Kremes, but I mean, the true meaning behind it is, it's not, it's deeper than donuts. It's about, really putting aside what you want and in order to become like the deeper, better, actualized version of yourself, and then you get the reward at the end. It's in a way about what's the word I'm looking for? Delayed gratification, but at the same time, it's deeper than that too. So yeah, that was just a funny little visual. I'll repost that in case anybody wants to see it.
Yes, that was a great video, and it was funny. I'm not a huge sweet guy, but I do have. It's basically telling you we all have some sort of thing that we know is not good for us, and we could be better if we were disciplined enough to, you know, not not eat donuts for 4 years, which is
Right.
incredible, especially since you love donuts.
Yeah, yeah, man. And then I'll tell you what, delayed gratification is awesome because when you've held off from eating donuts for literally 4 years, then you get back from the Olympic Games and you have a donut for the first time. It's kind of like you're literally a different person by that point in time. So that was actually where I think that I kind of leveled up because like I had the first donut and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I don't need 12. you know? So yeah, that was 2016. And then at that time I said I enjoyed donuts for a few weeks and I was like, okay, now it's time to do it again. No donuts to Tokyo. And then that just sounded right. So we went with it.
Well, speaking of junk food, I was listening to Joe Rogan. He had an Olympic athlete on there, and he was talking about that in the Olympic Village they have McDonald's, and it's probably like the most popular place for the athletes to go.
Yep.
Uh, so, did you eat McDonald's during the Olympics?
I mean, I don't think you can go to the Olympic Village and not eat McDonald's. There was, and also, so yes, I did eat McDonald's, and it was free. And at Rio, now that was my first Olympic Games. I thought the food was great because it was very multicultural and kind of like a home style type of vibe. But apparently in London, the prior Olympics to Rio, the food was apparently better. I wouldn't know. That was just according to other Olympians who had been there. So there was always a line at McDonald's, a long one, because people either weren't enjoying the cafeteria food or I don't know. I guess you're just gonna have to get McDonald's because you're at the Olympics and it's free. But I definitely had some McDonald's after I competed for sure, and I don't even like McDonald's.
I can't remember which athlete it was, but he mentioned that it just, it's like one of the only familiar foods. So I think it was like kind of like a home kind of feeling to a lot of the athletes competing. And I could understand it. It's like so internationally known. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so how's the recovery? How's the training? How's the comeback? How's you know, the whole rehabilitation?
Oh, we're
And
back.
also, for the people listening in, they don't know exactly what you heard. So if you could,
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah,
speak on that as well.
yeah. So to answer your first question, yeah, I'm back. And I'm back better than where when I left. There's actually quantifiable data for that, but we'll go into that in another conversation. Um, it was, I guess, to say like I'm sorry. I'm also trying to like handle this dog real quick on the phone. Give me just one moment.
No, no problem. So I take it
I got a dog seat
you.
for my sister.
Oh, okay, I was going to ask you if that was your dog.
Yeah, no, he's a little 10-year old Yorkie man, just sniffing around and stuff, trying to make sure he's not doing nothing silly. Okay, so yes, about where would we lead? Could you remind me what we were talking about just now?
About the
Or
recovery.
the recovery, yes. So it's so funny how I get sidetracked when there's a dog around. So the recovery is going well. I'm fully recovered, and as far as that goes, again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. I'm just deciding not to dive in too soon. Instead, to really readdress my bases, and because I'm at this point where I'm further along than where I left off, but I see now, even in my training from ATG and all these other different modalities that I've implemented and focusing on the little things, I see now the potential I can reach. And it's so far beyond anything I've ever done that it would be cheating myself to start on the process too prematurely, if that makes sense.
No, I agree, and and we'll get into this a little bit more.
For sure.
I Since I discovered ATG, I feel that there's a lot more potential to my human body. And for those of you who don't know what ATG is a system. I train under a guy named Ben Patrick, and that's knees over toes, and another guy named uh, Keegan, and they really specialize in a lot of knee rehabilitation, legs, training tibialis, typical body parts that are not trained by the average person. And actually, that's one question I wanted to ask you. Since you're training that, was that a system or exercises that you were doing before, or did you discover it because of ATG?
Another great question because I actually am a certified personal trainer and I studied kinesiology in school. So I have done a lot of the exercises, although in traditional fitness circles, they kind of frown upon anything going knees over toes and so on and so forth, especially for older populations. But knowing that I'm an athlete and knowing that I've been jumping, like I said, jumping off of tree branches onto hard ground when I would jump off of I'm not even going to say what I would jump off of, but all these things I would jump off of and do as a kid, I would find myself in these positions where my knees were way over my toes. And I never got hurt, even up to the point now where I'm still doing box jumps and whatnot. I don't get hurt for those reasons. So I would say that the KOT stuff, I wouldn't say it was stuff that I was definitely doing beforehand, but I guess to see somebody else doing it really like made real the point that this is real. And that this is not a paid testimonial, but this is also me just being real that a lot of the stuff Ben Patrick talks about is stuff that I've been doing as an athlete for 15 years, and it's precisely why it's precisely why when I got the freak accident injury, whatever you want to label it as, last year, that's exactly why when that happened and my foot slipped off that box, my ankle wasn't broken, but it was sprained. So to go back to what you mentioned, ask about the actual injury, it was a grade 2 high ankle sprain. So there were just some ligament damage in there, and it took a while for that inflammation to calm down, and then just based on the nature of my foot, they decided to put me in a cast rather than going immediately into a boot. And I at first I kind of debated whether that was the right thing to do or not. I still questionable about it, but I actually am grateful for it because it definitely created a way for full recovery. But as far as where the KOT stuff came into play, it was shortly after I was out of the cast and walking in a boot, and I was like, okay, I know that I need to get some deep. I need to get back to my deeper mobility. I lost a lot of mobility in my dorsiflexion. If anybody doesn't know what dorsiflexion is, that's when you lift your foot up, like almost like you're trying to lift your toes towards your chin. And so I lost major. I think I lost a significant amount of my dorsiflexion. And then my physical therapist, again, having studied kinesiology and been in the fitness industry for 10 years, my physical therapist, after he kind of got me out of the cast and walking again without limping, I realized very quickly that I didn't need him. I was like, all the stuff you're telling me to do, I do on my own as part of my warm up. And I need to get deeper because, I need to get into deeper positions. So it was right around that time where, the Instagram algorithm had been listening to my conversation and decided to show me Ben Patrick stuff.
Wow, that's interesting because pretty much a lot of the people he names are high caliber athletes. So I just figured, is that something that all Olympic athletes kind of train and know, or and then just the common average person is barely getting access to this information? Um, so that was my reason for that question.
Yeah.
And when you were on the boot, was pretty much just the whole rest time, or did you actually train while on the boot?
Oh, I was just resting. Like I said, there was some pretty significant damage in the ankle where things just. I guess you have to put it this way. I've been running this track thing for so long that when it's kind of like when you get a flat tire, it's like and then you replace it with a new tire. You kind of have to get used to the new state of your body. I'm sure you know about that as a coach and athlete as well. So it took me a while to really get acquainted with the new normal of my ankle. Um, and there were times where I would try to go back to training as usual and ended up finding myself I was feeling a lot more sore. And I was like, okay, it came to a point where I literally just said, I don't know what to do. Because again, as an athlete, you are you're the CEO. You're the head coach, you're the CEO. Even if you have a coach, they work under you. So with coaching and, therapists and all that giving me in one ear, on my other side, on my other shoulder, I have myself saying, okay, no matter what these people say, I know something's not right. So it took me a long time to finally really learn to work with my body where it was at versus where I wanted it to be. And the irony in that is by settling down and focusing on where I was in the moment, I made so much progress so much faster than I could have ever imagined. It's a paradox, but yeah.
And I was watching the videos and I see your training and you're looking strong. So how long has it been since you had to like completely not basically get started? How long have you been in the whole retraining mode?
Man. So and I appreciate that because I've only been quote unquote retrained. I don't want to say only. The process started last June in earnest. I remember writing a note to myself that I'm going to relearn the triple jump from the ground up, and I started training again back June, July. Um, and what ended up happening was, like I said, kind of ran into those roadblocks. But by the time it was, I'd say January of this year, almost a calendar year from the date of injury, was when I was like, okay, I'm back. And man, it's like it's a magical feeling to to go through something like that and then just know that you're beyond it. It took a while. It took longer than I thought it would, but I mean, here we are again. So yes, even though things are looking strong, and even though the jumps I'm putting out right now are right at the same distance and further than the jumps I put out before the injury, which means I'm clearly doing something right. I still see that was just because I only focus on the small things in my training. Now wait till I add in the macro versus in addition to the micro. That's where things get really exciting.
And so since recovery and training is going so well, then what are the goals from when is the next trials or competitions?
That's a great question that many people wouldn't know about.
Is that
The
due because of the whole COVID situation?
Yes, exactly. So again, what I mentioned earlier, not to make a false equivalency between a pandemic and someone's personal problems. Um, COVID, because it postponed the Olympics for 1 year. So this year's next month's Olympics, the Tokyo 20, there's not Tokyo 2021 Olympics. They're still officially titled the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, even though it's taking place in 2021. Um, Knowing that that's happening a year late, the Olympic cycle is always 4 years. But by that being postponed by 1 year, the next Olympic cycle is only 3 years. In addition to that, there are world championships, two world championships last year that were postponed, or in the past 2 years that were postponed between indoors and outdoors. So all that gets pushed now instead of it being spread out from 2019 to 2024. We have the same amount of competitions being spread out from 2022 to 2024. They're not going to push back the next Olympics, just because of this one. So what that means is we have next year we have not one world championship as usual, but two world championships, one indoors, one outdoors. We have the Commonwealth Games, which is a big outside of the U.S., because the U.S. isn't in the Commonwealth, it's one of the biggest sporting events in the world. We also have the All African Games coming up in 2023, and then obviously Paris 2024. So for me, it was like, okay, I could sacrifice Tokyo, knowing that we have major competition opportunities from now until 2024, and that's if I decide to compete up until 2024. We're still taking it year by year, but I know that if I do decide to compete at 2024, I would still be putting out my best jumps at that point in time.
The audience showing some love and agree with you.
Yeah, oh man, I didn't even realize we could do that. Like, I'm so fresh to fireside. So appreciate that. That was cool.
Wow. And so, I mean, me as a non-Olympic athlete, and I hear you say, "Well, that's if I decide to go." What would stop you from going if it's not getting too personal? Because to me, that's just like a dream to get to repeat. Like the pinnacle of a career, and maybe just because you got to experience it, and you mentioned that it's more about giving back now. That's why you're satisfied. But if you could speak on that a bit.
Mm. Um, this one's gonna go deep, and I'm fine with it too. There's a quote that I heard when I came back from my first Olympics, and it's from Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens, one of the greatest Olympians of all time, set multiple world records at one Olympic Games in Nazi Germany in front of Hitler. He said that and I'm paraphrasing, but he said that the road to the Olympic Games leads to no city, it leads to no country. The road to the Olympic Games leads, in the end, to the best that's within us. So it's kind of like that Michael Jordan mentality where you got to know that, well, what I've reached, I should say, where I know I'm the greatest. I don't need outside, I don't need outside validation, to prove that I am one of the greatest athletes of all time. I simply know it now. It's just kind of who I am. Um, so that being said, going to the Olympics, again, I've done it, and it's part of because I'm going to go to the greatest of all time in what I do. So with that mentality, it's just like whether I decide to go, whether I don't. It's just a matter of how much I'm having fun with it. If I get to 2024, I'm not having fun with this anymore. Bye. I'm jumping into sand at the end of the day. It's supposed to be fun, but for me, there's also a real life portion of it where you know being in professional track and field, which is not a very revenue based sport, um, it's it's not easy to hold a professional career and a track and field career. It's very difficult. But at the same time, it's morphed me into this new man who is really capable of handling the challenges that comes to him. So I'm very grateful for it. Never would have changed it. But all that been said, looking forward to 2022, 2024, just kind of depends. I'm also 30 now. I have wouldn't mind starting a family with my special person right now, and so I'm just wearing all those things. If I hadn't gone to the Olympics already, I'm sure I'd be speaking differently. But again, it's like I have nothing to prove. I literally have nothing to prove to anybody. So I'm certified in my own mind.
That's great. And you mentioned something. I had a guest yesterday. He was the blind national surfing champion, and but for the USA. And
Oh wow.
yeah, I was asking him about sponsorships and how much does the USA pay, and they don't really pay much. And so you touched on that a little bit. So
Yeah.
uh, so the people who, I know people hear the Olympics and gold, but it's not easy for those athletes. So if you could speak on that a little bit more, please.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So typically, when you look at it, is Olympic athletes a lot of times are professional athletes, but not all professional athletes are Olympians and or Olympic athletes. So I say that meaning even though LeBron James is an Olympic champion, I think they won in 2012. That he also is an NBA player, and we all know the NBA championships comes around once every year. Makes way more money than the Olympics makes for a lot more people. So when your sport, your Super Bowl is the Olympic Games, you have to make it a part of your lifestyle. And unfortunately, it's not really the zeitgeist right now where people uplift Olympic athletes for that reason. And I think that's sad because not to make false equivalencies, but I mean, we're talking about athletes who are setting world records and literally becoming the best of all time to ever do what they're doing by bootstrapping their careers. Whereas, and again, I have friends in the NBA who I went to school with, so I'm not talking trash, but I mean these guys are getting paid a minimum of how much? What, six figures to play every year, and that's if they even touch the floor. So you can't really compare the typical professional athlete, the NFL player, the NBA player, to the Olympian, the Olympic. Not me say Olympian, but the Olympic athlete. And the Olympic athlete, when I say that, I mean people who are training for the Olympics. So because that drive, man, where you can get another chance in football or baseball or basketball every single year, the Olympic Games, you only get it once every four, in this case, five. So it really affects how you live your life even more so than, say, if I got a paycheck to go try to reach the Super Bowl once a year.
Right. The opportunity for the Olympic Games is way more limited, and then as an athlete, injury that could cost you 4 years, and just depending on your sport, that might be it for you. Like I know gymnastics has a really young cutoff age, so it all just depends on your sport.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I saw that you have some sort of, I think, brand, or I don't know if it got sponsored, but it looks pretty cool. It's some sort of weather gear. Is that your personal line that you came out with?
Oh, no, that's not my personal line, but it is. It's called Speedline Athletics, and it's a brand partner with them. They make some really nice athletic gear, some track gear, just general sports gear as well, training, gym, that type of stuff. The quality is, I mean, honestly, the quality is higher than Nike in many ways, and a lot of these top shelf brands, and they're very new. The cool part about it is it's also a family friend. So my dad's best friend's son. So it's almost like a cousin who started the company, and he's actually doing a really good job with the quality of the product. So I don't really like to represent anything I don't truly believe in. So I won't post about anything I don't believe in. I won't talk. I rarely talk about things I don't believe in. So yeah, his stuff's really good.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, the Speedline, I remember it was a cool name, the logo, and even just the whole thing looked pretty cool. My friend, I shared your video, and he's like, "Oh, is that his brand? Is that?" And so I had to ask because it's a pretty cool idea, and I just kind of like the whole look. So
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot.
and so right now, since you mentioned it is difficult for Olympic athletes, is there anything if people want to like sponsor or help you out, or anything that we can do for you?
Man, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for saying that because I really, one of my missions is to really, you know, open people's eyes to what we do as Olympic athletes to provide people entertainment once every 4 years. The day to day work that goes into that for 2 weeks, you know. So even you asking that question, and so that's big. I just want to let you know that's very significant. I appreciate it. Um, as far as what people could do, I have some projects coming up that will. I can't just necessarily just watch this space, follow me, keep in touch with me, reach out to me, let's communicate. And more immediately, always feel free to just donate money, donate cash to a GoFundMe. It's not that I'm sitting here strapped for cash. I'm still very, very fortunate in where I'm at. But I mean, when you're talking about, chiropractic visits a month alone can run up to 200 or $600 and little things like that. All of that really adds up. And if it's not me, better yet, put it this way, if there's one way you want to help me, don't worry about me because I'm good, thank the Lord. But if you come across another athlete who is, they say they're training for the Olympics, or they're trying to, go for any Olympic sport, support them. And that would be, I think that would be even more like beneficial than, if you want to send some money my way, that's great. But a lot of what I do in my mentorship is also just try to make the way for the next guys. So yeah. And if you guys need like a list of kids to invest in, I can definitely provide you with that.
So in your coaching, you mentioned you coach in college, and right now you mentioned kids. Are you doing like a variety, or are you focusing on what type of athlete are you coaching?
I coach a lot of athletes over over the years. George, when I was coaching at Georgetown as a D1 coach, it was just sprints and jumps. So it was very focused. More recently, I've coached a lot of high schoolers, middle schoolers, and a young college athletes in, depending on their sport, mainly speed and agility and quickness. And as far as track and field goes, long jump and triple jump, um, with technical coaching as well. It just kind of depends. Right now, the coaching I'm doing is primarily, since with COVID and everything going on, it's been less in person and primarily through mentorship calls and mindset coaching, which kind of mirrored in my content that I'm creating. So yeah, my coaching in my career and just the coaching I do at any moment, it's constantly evolving. If there's one specific type of coaching I enjoy doing most, it would be triple coaching the triple jump, as you might imagine, but also probably equally coaching the mind of any athlete I meet, regardless of sport.
Is there a pinnacle you'd like to reach as far as in coaching?
Oh man, I don't never even thought about that. I would like for my coaching business to build up a little bit. Again, that's something I'm currently working on. I have a couple of different projects I'm working on at once. Between training and all other things going on. But the coaching business I have that's going on, I would definitely love that one.
And then I know that getting to the Olympics mentally, physically, emotionally uh, wasn't easy. So, what would you say to any little kids maybe listening to this or will hear it and who have dreams about the Olympic Games? What would you say for them to be able to follow through and get there?
Hmm. First and foremost, yeah, I guess a really good way to put it is understand you're probably going to make your parents angry. You're probably going to disappoint your parents. Even the parents that support you in everything that you do, if they see you struggling financially, they're going to be worried about it. That's not going to be everybody's path, but just speaking based on my own. Um, and other than that, understand that truthfully, it's deeper than money. It's, as I said earlier with that quote, the road to the Olympics in the end leads to the best that's within us. Um, And I truly believe that. Now, I'm fortunate to have found that out through experience to then see that quote. And I'm sure it could just sound like words or lip service to somebody who hasn't made it. But again, it's kind of reflected in No Donuts to Tokyo. I live that where if you just strive to become better on the daily, no matter what you're doing, it makes you a better athlete. And then the Olympics happens as a result. So keep things in perspective. Understand that the road to the Olympics again leads to being your best in all things, not just in sports.
Thank you for that. And what about, especially since it's so recent for you, what would you say to people who just recently got hurt, got injured, and it can be? I know I've been injured a few times, and sometimes you wonder, like, will I ever get to compete again, and
Hmm.
things like that, and for really high level athletes, I've also heard a lot of them, get depressed. So, what would you say to anyone who just recently got hurt to, kind of keep going?
Man, you gotta feel it. Feel all of it. I went through all the emotional roller coaster you just described. You gotta feel it, man. And don't hide from the anger. Don't hide from the frustration. Have your time alone so you can just cuss and scream and shout and pray out loud, do whatever you need to do. Because if you hold that in, that will implode. And if you let it out, you realize that negative emotion that you're feeling was just a whole bunch of energy that when you harness it and channel it in the right direction, it actually is positive. Even if the circumstances that brought it about wouldn't have been labeled positive, or less than what you would, less than ideal, it can really lead to the catalyst you need in your career. So if you've gone through an injury, and you got to just also learn to know yourself, where you know what you're doing it for and why you're doing it for, and then you can weigh up your options. If what you're doing, you know that you have more in the tank and it aligns with your goals in the long term, keep going. And I'm not going to sit here and say that everybody should keep going, but I think part of athletics is taking a challenge and going beyond it to reach your goal. But on the other hand, if you're one of those people who maybe think it's time to throw in the towel, or maybe like that was just the again catalyst for you to do other things, be honest with yourself in that capacity too.
Uh, yes, I don't know if you follow any NFL, but if you've seen that Alex Smith and what happened with his leg and all
Mm-hmm.
these surgeries he went through just to come back. He came back and then he retired because he wanted to prove something to his sons, to his kids,
Yeah.
about working hard, and even though it may be impossible. And I saw the whole little documentary on it. It's hard to watch what happened to his leg. So,
Oh yeah, I saw that too. That was crazy. I from the DC area, so I remember when he got hurt. Yeah, that was crazy.
and yet he just basically wanted to prove something to his kids, send out a good message. So, if anyone hasn't watched that, I highly recommend it.
Mhm.
And I always want to make sure that you can promote anything you want, any websites, any coaching courses, anything that you do. Feel free to let us know. I'm sure there's people interested.
Oh, for sure. Well, one of the things I haven't even mentioned this whole time is that in the absence of competing in the past year, it's allowed me to really fulfill my ambitions as a photographer. And I've always loved photography, even from high school. And in the quarantine, I bought a camera, and the rest is history. I'm actually now a resident photographer at a nearby professional studio in Atlanta. So I know it sounds kind of tangential to sports and seems like out of the blue, but if anybody wants to follow my photography page on Instagram, it's at OLUM as in Michael IDE .co. So olumide.co. That's my full first name. Um, it started as a passion project. It always will be a passion project, but it's really opening some major doors, and I that's a journey I really want people to watch right now as well.
I took photography for a couple of years. It's a it's a great hobby. It could be expensive as well. Uh,
Mhm.
what type of camera did you get? Are you Team Canon or?
Yeah, I got a Canon 250 EOS 250D. It's a small camera that punches way above its weight class, and it's more than paid for itself since then.
And so, do you like to take photography of sports, or what do you like to photograph?
Well, really everything, because the way I think about photography is that this is how I looked at it when I was a kid. Is that I look at the world in photos, if that makes sense. So I compose things in my mind's eye or in my front of my face. By the time I pick up the camera, I just snap and get to make the picture of what I already saw in my mind. Um, so I like to take pictures of everything for for that reason. But professionally, I'm focusing on sports and lifestyle photography, or portraiture rather. So not just sports like in action sports, but more so portraits of the athlete. And again, without going too deep into detail, if you check out my that Instagram page, you maybe kind of get a better grasp of that.
I definitely will. I somehow missed that photography thing. I was probably too busy watching the donut videos.
No, no worry. I actually don't really publicize it too much, but I'm realizing I got to just do that. So yeah.
And is there any other endeavors or anything else you want to promote that you are getting into or have coming up?
Um. Sure. This summer I'll have a coaching program specifically for triple jumpers coming out, and that will be pretty awesome to see. And then that will be hosted online. It'll be a sale for sale. And also every once in a while, and I'm going to start the schedule up again soon as I get settled from traveling. But for the past 2 month and a half or so, I host bi-weekly meditation for mindfulness for athletes calls. It's labeled as meditation for athletes, but it covers topics of mindfulness. It's not just for athletes, it's for anybody, period. So if you resonate with the topics of mindfulness and really self actualization, that's something you definitely want to be on. That's on Zoom. I do that on Zoom. Again, I usually do it on Thursdays bi-weekly, but that schedule will be coming out shortly. If you just keep your eye on my Instagram, it'll be all on there.
And how long is that usually?
One
Your
hour.
one
It
hour?
it usually goes from 40 minutes to an hour. And what we'll do is we'll talk about open up the discussion with just an experience of my own and mindfulness, and then open the topic for discussion among the crowd, and then we finish up with a short 5-minute meditation among everybody who's on the call.
That's great. I definitely feel the more athletes should meditate and just look into alternatives to release their stress, because it builds up, and then we know what stress does to the body. So especially younger guys with a lot of testosterone want to just lift weights, and they think meditation isn't cool. So uh,
Right.
that's awesome that you're promoting that, and I'll definitely have to check it out.
Appreciate that, man. Those are the two causes that I'm really important to me now. Because as you just said, man, yeah, we meditate. And meditations have improved me as an athlete and my performance for sure. But the person I have become through meditation is really the prize. So yeah, I want to share that with the world.
And then my last question is, how many times a week are you training for coming back, like for your comeback?
Um, uh, it varies. I at some points in the year, if like this past year since January, I was pretty much training 5, sometimes 6 days a week. As far as lifting and track days and other just general workout days. Right now, from about maybe mid-May, no, last week of May, I have actually not been fully training. I just consider it my off season now because um, it's very important that I kind of rest. I've been doing a lot of traveling lately, although at the same time I did compete. So remember, this is very much an anomaly of a year where right now I'd actually be going straight into the highest point of the season. But right now, as I said earlier, this is a different year, so I'm taking it to just collect data with every training session. But also, I'm not training full time. I'll pick that back up in the mid to late July.
Yes, this definitely is a different year. We all have to learn how to adjust, overcome, and adapt to new situations. I know I've had to make a lot of shifts myself personally, and
Mhm.
so I want to thank you so much for being a guest here, and I wish you much luck in your coaching and your comeback. And also, I want to see you compete in the Olympic Games, and that way I can have you back as a guest and talk about how you became the greatest of all time, even though we already know you are.
Much appreciated, man. We said it here first.
And, and do you plan to have a donut until you decide if you go to the Olympics or not?
Oh man. Okay. For that, I'll just have to say keep your eyes on my Instagram page and I'll be announcing what I'm doing about that in soon time.
All right. Well, thank you so much once again for being here. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And Olu, thank you once again.
Thank you, Ray. Take it easy, y'all.
It's no secret